think philosophy is important because philosophy is to do with thinking, and philosophy is to do with thinking well. And if thinking has a role to play in our lives, in education, then surely there's a case for anything which is to do with thinking well.
So we think you should teach philosophy to children because they're at that age when they're trying to understand the world around them. And by grappling with the big concepts that surround us, children can start to make distinctions and think about things in a different way. So when we do philosophy in schools, we don't go in and teach the history of ideas. We get children doing philosophy. We get them thinking about things together, working together collaboratively, coming up with counterexamples, really doing philosophy in the true sense.
So principally, the way to do this is not to put philosophical theses in front of them and say, right, what do you make of that? What you do is you find a way of sort of organically getting the children to see a philosophical problem for themselves.
In the classroom mainly, it's philosophical conversation. So we have the children dialoguing with each other. One of my favourites actually is called the two square, where you draw 4 twos on a board and you simply ask, how many numbers are there here?
By which, the very first response may simply be 4. And the reason might be because there's 4 twos. As simple as that, as obvious as that. And then by activating the class to see if anyone thinks there are different answers or how many more you can get, you may end up with 12 different answers to that one question. Some of them will say 2,222 because they'll put them all together, and some will say it goes on infinitely because you can add them up, you can times them, you can plus them, and at some point somebody will often say there's only one number there, or there's 2 numbers, or there's no numbers. They start to recognize that this is something that they're not easily going to solve. And at some point, some of them will say, I'm confused now. I'm not quite sure what to think. Or I agree with that, and I agree with that.
We're looking at what is number, and are they real? Are they in the world, or are they out there? And if they're out there, how can they make sense? So it opens up the whole realm of the philosophy of mathematics. And even as an adult, I sort of struggle with that concept between how is it that the world is so perfect and so perfectly mathematical? But surely humans are the people who invented numbers in the first place. So how does that figure? And children have exactly the same experience.
The pedagogy behind this is that we have a kind of dialectical process of making sure the questions we ask are always related to the main question, which in this case is how many numbers are there, and then we never introduce our own content. We simply take what they give us. So if they say, there's no numbers there, my question is, why are there no numbers there? And what's happening is that they are seeing how good philosophy is done by seeing it done by the class. The idea is that in the long term, that will be internalized. And each person in that room, seeing how good dialogue progresses, will then start to do similar things themselves in their own head, what Socrates called the silent dialogue. If you were to go into a classroom and say for a bunch of year 4s, let's say 8-year-olds, and say to them, by the way, numbers are just symbols that represent an abstract entity that doesn't really seem to have any reality, or does it? If you were to say that, you'd probably just get a lot of blank faces looking at you thinking you've gone mad. But if you question them in the right way, if you provide the conditions for them to be able to identify philosophical problems for themselves, they'll often say back to you the thing that you would never dream of saying to them. That's the trick. On occasion, I've had children say to me, but that means that numbers aren't real. And that means that these aren't numbers at all, but then what are numbers? Now, that's pretty much similar to what I just dismissed as the thing you can't say to children.
So there's been quite a lot of research done on the impact of philosophy on children in schools. Children's ability to read improves through doing philosophy, their ability to communicate their ideas, their confidence. So it has impact on affective skills and also on cognitive skills, so reasoning skills as well. However, I think we shouldn't just dismiss philosophy as something that improves things in other places. Philosophy is important in and of itself. Just like music and maths. We need philosophy because it's a human thing to do, to think, to reason, to reflect.
Because philosophy has this special ability to step outside of itself, and also to step outside of any subject, the philosophy of education, philosophy of philosophy, that sort of thing. It seems to me that philosophy has an important role to play to safeguard against the ways in which education might sometimes be used to control people, to encourage the way they think. If we have something like philosophy within the system, something that steps outside of that system and asks questions about it, then we have something to protect us, a safeguard against those kinds of worries.